Well, Ted, I'd like to thank you again for giving us this opportunity to meet with you and talk about the American Legion and what it's been to you and your family.
Well, Gary, let me just thank you because it's my pleasure to be here. This is a great opportunity and share some thoughts with you.
When did you first start getting involved with the American Legion?
I first started getting involved with the American Legion relatively recently when I was at Lehman Brothers, near the very end of Lehman Brothers, and Jeff Stouffer reached out to me, and we became friends. And then I started to get involved. And then he asked me to serve as the chairman of the honorary committee, and I was delighted to have that role. We've got a great committee, so it's been a wonderful experience for me.
What a great opportunity to have you involved with the American Legion centennial celebration, 100 years after your grandfather pretty much created this organization.
Well, there were a number of people that worked with him. He was a co-founder, but to say he was the founder is just, and the co-founders need to be remembered too.
How do you think your grandfather would react to what the American Legion is today?
I think he'd be very proud. I think he would see what the American Legion has done. The story about how it single-handedly took on CDC and said you're wrong about Agent Orange, and for a whole lot less money proved what Agent Orange had done to American service members.
How would you like to see the American Legion change in the coming years?
Well, I guess one of the things that I think the Legion is beginning to do this, but I hope that every post takes it and says, we have an obligation to make sure we're successful at this, to reach out as effectively as they know how, share stories and best lessons on how they can get the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans in. There is still a perception that I don't think is entirely fair, but the Legion needs to recognize that that perception exists, that we're sort of a place where people go to drink that are old and don't do very much. And so working with Team Rubicon, the Mission Continues, et cetera, student veterans of the U.S., which the Legion is doing, but I consider that an incredibly important opportunity for the Legion to make itself relevant to the new generation of veterans, bring them in, work with them, and listen to them, because they'll have ideas. And nobody has a monopoly on wisdom. And so working with them, I think, is just a very important, not only to help them, but have them help us. And as long as we understand it's a reciprocal relationship, I think it'll work out well for everyone.
You had mentioned about the global war on terrorism veterans and getting involved in the American Legion. Large amount of global war on terrorism veterans, and their needs and concerns are different than those of the Vietnam veterans.
Yes.
And hopefully the American Legion as a whole changes to meet those needs and concerns of these global war on terrorism veterans.
Yeah, I think that's important for them, but it's very important for us. We need to make sure we are totally relevant and we're at the forefront of leading the necessary changes.
Ted, I have a picture here of President Truman holding the hand of a young child. What can you tell me about this picture?
Well, that was a picture taken in 1947, right at the White House. And it was a day in which we were commemorating, and I'd gone down with my parents and my grandmother, and the U.S. Postal System had come out with a commemorative series of postage stamps commemorating grandfather's career. And so you can see what a friendly man Truman was. He's enjoying it, having fun. I'm not quite sure what was going on.
Very nice picture. Of all the American Legion programs that you're aware of, what's your favorite program?
That's a really good question. I would say one of the things that I like are things that are done. The baseball program is terrific because you get kids in to play baseball, and it's a uniquely American activity. So I think I I really enjoy that. I think that's really good. But I also enjoy when the Legion, which it does, I think, with great judiciousness, gets involved in the political arena. And I'm not, I don't really care what it is, but when they say, we've got to do something to rectify this, their influence and power is enormous. And, the GI Bill being a classic example of that. And, one of the great legionaries going and writing the bill by hand. And the story that I still love is where a congressman from Georgia gives his proxy to the chairman of the committee with the understanding it was going to be voted out of the committee, and it's not. So he's in Georgia, somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains. Nobody knows where he is. So the Legion discover it's being held up by a recalcitrant chairman who had some issues with it, partly because it was going to treat people of color equally. And they had to track down the congressman in Georgia. They got the local police all over the state. They found him. They drove him as fast as they could to the Atlanta airport, and Eddie Rickenbacker got him up into Washington, and he stormed into the House of Representatives and made his mind clear, and it came out. That's a great story, and that in many ways epitomizes for me the Legion. And what I like about, and it's particularly relevant now, as you see some of the political things going on, and you may decide you want to edit this out, but the concept the Legion has, a veteran is a veteran. Those are ringing words, and the Legion has been true to that concept, and it should be proud of it because it's taken us a while, and we still have a way to deal with the issue of people that are different than us, and we need to recognize that's a lingering challenge to the American democracy.
No, I can't agree with you more that a veteran is a veteran, and we are veterans caring for veterans. Ted, as you've seen others make that transition and get back into civilian workforce, have you spoken with them, and what's the advice you would give?
I have spoken, and one of the things that I'm delighted, I'm co-head of Barclays Military Network, and my co-head is a young Army intelligence officer, and she's probably about half my age, and we have three goals. One, to hire as many veterans as we can. Secondly, to bridge the gap between the civilian world and the military world. And we do that by having veterans come and talk to our non-veterans and to the veterans, and we'll invite clients to that. And to the extent we can, get people involved with specific veterans activities and have them maybe contribute money. And a lot of people within Barclays and in the United States like this, so they find it really interesting. But making that transition is hard.
We spoke earlier about the brotherhood, that camaraderie and a spirit de corps that we share as service members. I keep in contact with service members that I served in Iraq. We get together a couple times a year. And just that camaraderie is what keeps us going. And I know you shared about the camaraderie with a service member that was ill, and I have the same situation. I have a fellow Seabee that's suffering from ALS, and he's got only a few months to go. And we meet with him regularly, and that's what keeps him going is that camaraderie.
Yeah, I think that's an essential part of being in the military and what it means. People who've been there with you and who had your back. We had a phrase in the teams, so-and-so was a good operator. And that meant that you could count on them. They'd make the right decisions in times that were difficult, and you could count on them. They would not let you down. And when you have that kind of relationship with people, it's not going to disappear. And Shakespeare in Henry V has that wonderful quote, tomorrow is the Feast of St. Crispin. Old men forget, yet he'll remember with advantages what feats he did this day, and then strip his sleeve and say, "These wounds I had on St. Crispin's Day. For he who sheds his blood for me today shall be my brother, be he ne'er so vile. This day shall gentle his condition." You know, that summarizes, I think, well, you know, even if you weren't in combat, but were in the military, that team ethic just rises up, and it's part of who you are and what you were.
I've met with a couple groups of student vets of America at some state universities here in New York, and we've spoken, and I experienced some things they experienced. When I came back from Iraq, I came into the airport in my deserts, and there was Vietnam vets to congratulate us being home. I'm talking 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're there with cell phones, with food, to welcome us home. Something that they didn't experience.
Right.
But it will never happen again on their watch, what happened to them, and it won't happen on my watch as
Right.
well.
That's very moving. And I saw a ceremony once which moved me enormously, still does, to recount it. My wife and I were getting off the airplane. We'd flown from New York via Minneapolis to Bozeman. We're getting off, and on our plane were a number of veterans, and the stewardess asked if we'd stay in our seats so they could get off first. And we're obviously pleased to do that. So in that airport, when you get off an airplane, you sort of walk to where there's a stairway going down, and there was a reception for them. And here you had a whole bunch of veterans getting off, and wives or parents were greeting them. There were tears, there was joy, children were there. And then there was another group of people standing quietly that were just waiting. I said to my wife, "Let's wait, let's see what happens." And then another group of veterans got off, following the other that kind of, but they were stayed together as if somehow they knew what might happen. And they got off, and then the first group of veterans were sort of quickly taken away by their friends and family. And the second group went down. And then a few Native Americans got up and spoke to them. "You've brought honor to the tribe." It was powerful, knowing what they'd done.
Very touching.
Yeah, it was.
Ted, on behalf of the American Legion Department of New York, we'd like to present you this certificate of recognition to appreciate all that you've done for our country and the American Legion.
Well, thank you. I'm touched by that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.